This is a more improvised video as I haven't actually done a video essay before. But before I start, I would like to say that this is not meant to be a hate video or anything like that. This is just things that I, as an Adamaï fan, have, observed and connected. This is probably going to be, really messy, really, uneven, stuff like that. And it's a collection of my thoughts in the end, so it's, not exactly the most cohesive thing. So just bear with me on that. Another thing I would really like to make clear is I am not in any ways a psychologist, and my words should not be used to bash other fans or other people, nor is it necessarily correct. I hope you enjoy the video, and I'm just gonna jump into it. So starting with seasons 1 and 2, Adamai is a very different character than how he is portrayed later in the show, which is a good thing in my eyes. Adamai is playful, excitable, a bit overbearing, and slightly childish, and he plays around with Yuko when they first meet. Adamai is small and humanoid, which is probably a factor in why we, as a fandom, liked him so much when he was younger. But, he's obviously a little socially stunted and grew up alone with the jungle and Grugel Orgren and maybe has stolen Gollum, as we see that in the Slice of Life comics. The thing that we see very quickly is that Adamai has a strong love of fun, like Yugo does. However, we do see some very immediate differences, like how Adamai is very focused on their people, which is obviously excusable for Yugo's sake because he just learned about their people. He just learned he's an heliotrope. And there's already this big thing happening, and he's already supposed to find his family, which he did. But Adamai, in general, is a more driven and focused character than Yugo is, because typically he's more of the realist out of the two twins. Yugo's the dreamer, and he's the one who's stuck on the ground, ironically being the dragon. Adamai loses everything in the span of a couple hours after meeting his brother, it's the entire thing he was raised for, to meet his brother, to understand that this is his twin, this is the other half of his soul. And yet, Nox kills his older brother, destroys his home, and Grugel Orgren sends him to a completely different place with these people that he just met literally only a few minutes ago, and his twin brother that he met maybe an hour ago. For the most part, I've only seen a few people hate season 1 Adamai, which is strange in of itself because he's a child. Why would you dislike a child for just being childish? But usually they see him as annoying, which, yeah, that's how kids are sometimes. That's just life. But in season 2 is where things start to change, because we start to see a stubborn and impatient side to Adamai, such as in, the episode Kilby. Adamai is persistent to the point of stealing the Iliocube and Grugel's Dolphus, not even asking if Yugo was okay with it until after he's already done the things. Which is honestly understandable. He's been raised his entire life knowing that him, his twin brother, and his older brother are the only people left of their race. And, obviously you wouldn't want to be alone. So after your older brother dies, it's just you and your twin brother. So, what are you gonna do? But Adamai seems to be chafing really, really hard under the Sedita Kingdom's rules, and even though he's a dragon, he's still a child, and he's seen that way, and obviously not fully respected. Honestly, being non-human probably didn't help, because, let's face it, there's probably a lot of racism against dragons. But besides the fact that Adamai had stolen everything, Adamai isn't exactly punished for it. But he does get saddled with nanny duty, as he's apparently the only one who can control a baby dragon, which is kind of unfair to ask of a 12, 13-year-old, because he's already been through so much, and he's only had a little bit of time to reconnect with this twin brother who's supposed to be his soulmate, essentially. And it's not enough time for a 13-year-old to process the fact that oh, my brother's gone as I knew him, and my home is gone, and I'm never gonna see it again, and I just went through a war and felt my brother die and my friend die, and that's it. And then, not to mention that he was left behind as his, friends went on a quest for his best friend, and his brother didn't even tell him. But Adamai is expected to be constantly taking care of Grugel as a child, and he's constantly being held accountable for every little thing Grugel does, and it's already clear that it took a toll on him, and I imagine he's already struggling knowing that, every single memory he's had with Grugel is just gone from his mind. He's the only one who will know those memories. Just think about how that would affect someone who's lived with that person for all their life, alone on an island with no one else. And then when you meet your twin brother, you were supposed to be able to stay with him on your home for longer, and then all of a sudden, you're in a tundra, and the brother that raised you is dead, and your home is destroyed, and everything you've ever known is gone. You also would be disoriented and devastated, and yet Adamai, being the strong dragon that he is, suppressed all of it because it had bigger matters to attend. And keep in mind, this is a 12-year-old who has lost everything that he ever knew. In season 2, he's also just abandoned and left to rot twice, and Yugo faces no backlash from it. I feel like Adamai would probably be disgruntled for that, because how are you going to do everything with your brother and friends for a good year, and then just leave? He didn't even tell him where he was going. At least understand that Adamai is going to be upset about it for a while. He can't just get over that immediately. And honestly, this is a basis for one of the diagnoses that I think I would assign him if he was to get a mental illness consultation. Personally, I think this is where Adamai's borderline personality disorder starts forming. Borderline personality disorder is characterized by a lot of mood swings that are usually triggered due to an intense fear of abandonment due to trauma from relationships. And Adamai has already been abandoned twice. He is already not having a good time, and clearly there is so much going on that he won't be able to fully process the fact that he's been abandoned, and it's just going to simmer and end up hurting him later. And then, going back on track, it's implied that Yugo was gone for months, so that worsens it because he didn't even tell Adamai. So then Adamai's stuck, not knowing where Yugo is for months on end. He's stuck in a kingdom with people he doesn't know, with unfamiliar races, and these constant expectations placed on him because he's a dragon and he's a child. And his twin brother just waltzes off with no care in the world. And obviously, that's going to affect him. And actually, this is a kind of loose point, but Adamai's personality does a 180 in season 3, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And people are always so jarred by it, but in all honesty, you can literally see it happening with Adamai realizing that he doesn't even know his brother that much. Like in the episode with the Council of 12 and Brakbar's prince talking about Yugo's revolt. You can start to see Adamai realizing that ultimately, Yugo's slipping through his fingers. This brother that he's only had for a few years, or a year even, just leaving again. He's going to be alone in the world, and you can probably tell how scary that is to Adamai. And then Kilby betrays him, the only other person he had to rely on that could actually understand him like Yugo had. Kilby beats him unconscious and offers him to Rushu, which, that possession looked painful. There were physical things restraining Adamai. And that's a 12-year-old, not even that, a 13-year-old. This is a child going through all of this. And Adamai didn't consent. He didn't understand what was going on because Kilby had used him. He taught him all of these wonderful things about their people and was so kind to him and Yugo, and it just paid off that he betrays them. He betrays the world of 12, he betrays Adamai, Yugo, and he lies to them. And that possession has to be extremely tough on Adamai, again, because it's a possession, it's a violation of your body and your mind and the way you act and think. And Adamai doesn't get to have that resolved, really. he's out of the possession and it's just done. That's it. It's never mentioned again. I mean, I get it. He's a dragon, but he's also a child. And that could have severe effects on a child. Which leads me into another thing. I think he would also be developing PTSD around this time. Because this is an issue that you can't control. You don't have power over. And he just has to deal with it. There's nothing he can do. I think Adamai is a really good character in these seasons. I think he's very well thought out. I think he is extremely nuanced. But it's really subtle. It's really in between the lines. If you learn how to look, you'll understand him more. And I think that is a reoccurring theme with Adamai. I think overall he's a love letter to mentally ill people. But that's not what I'm talking about. Here, he is a child, and he has been hurt repeatedly, and it has never been addressed. The mangas and the OVAs are a little hard to follow for me, in all honesty. I really like the mangas. I do have some issues with the OVAs, but they were fun to watch. They were pretty entertaining. Adamai in the mangas is very well characterized. He is silly. He genuinely seems to be like his season 2 self, except a little more recovered. I think the sweetest thing was his friends throwing him a birthday party and him being so surprised because, let's face it, that's probably the only birthday party he's ever had. And I think it's sweet that he got to spend it with a father who has grown to love him, his twin brother, and his friends, even if he's been hurt by them a few times already. Adamai keeps his core personality in the mangas, and he is, in character. He's very well written, but in serious moments, you can see what he's been through, and you can see how it affected him. Like the death of Grugel, for an example. When Ferris dies, you can see that he's just reliving trauma that had been lived when Grugel died. Which again is one of the reasons I think Adamai might have PTSD and BPD. Grugel Lorgren's death was very, very hard for him probably. And it was out of his control in the end. He probably felt abandoned and lost and confused because this is essentially his father figure who just died. And he had no control over it, but he probably convinces himself that if I had just done something better, then I could have helped him. He could have been here right now. And he is here right now in the form of little brother, which actually, that is so disturbing if you think about it. Because imagine you've been raised by this person all your life and they die, which is already sad enough. But then they're reborn and they don't remember you. They don't know you, and you're the only person left who remembers the things that you shared. It's just, I don't know, it seems terrifying to me. But going back on track, I think that the time he spends with Hugo and Alibert and people that loved him genuinely did actually do him good. He seemed a little better. However, this seems to slightly change in the OVAs when him and Hugo have their fight. He's like immediately jumping to conclusions that this isn't my brother. This is a fake. You replaced them. Which, honestly, logical, because Sifo just tricked him. Obviously, Adamai's actions are not entirely good, and obviously he's not entirely blameless in this fight, as he kind of instigated it. But Adamai was right to worry. We never see the damage that Hugo fully inflicts on the world of 12 by choosing to save Dali. And yet, Adamai is the one who's damaged. And actually, I think the OVAs are what solidifies his development of borderline personality disorder, because this abandonment is different. This abandonment has more stakes. And honestly, if you really take the time to look at it, before it was just his brothers dying. Like, yeah, that's gotta be hard. They're your brothers, but I mean, Hugo just leaves. He's not dead, he's just gone. He refused to listen to Adamai. He stole the Dofus from him, and in the end, he went to a wedding instead of look for him. A wedding! He has more time on his hands for his best friend than his twin brother. At least that's probably what's going on in Adamai's head. I'm sure Ava and Dali didn't mean to take away from Yugo's search for Adamai, but in the end, that's what they did. They had their wedding and they didn't invite Adamai, left to rot in the cold with Echo, which is really fucked up when you consider that in the end, he was keeping the fate of the world in mind over his best friend, because Yugo and Dali and him, they were all friends. They were all like brothers. And in the end, Yugo chose Dali over Adamai. Which this section actually leads me into season 3 Adamai, which is personally my favorite iteration of Adamai, because I think he was done very, very well. Adamai in season 3 is different. He's not the fun-loving little dragon that we knew before. He's changed a lot. He's human in the sense that it's like something crawled out of the womb completely unfinished. There's legs, there's arms, there's a chest, there's eyes, there's a head, there's a brain, but he doesn't look right. And I think that design is honestly one of the best character choices that was done for him. I agree, it's really ugly in terms of a design point without like taking the character into mind. Yeah, it's disgusting, I hate it. But in the end, it complements his personality in the season so well. I could gush about season 3 Adamai the entire time, honestly. I hate season 3. This is saying a lot because I despise season 3. It has potential. It's just not written right. But Adamai? He was perfect, in my opinion. Well, as close to perfect as he could get. Adamai in season 3 is cold. He's cunning. He's headstrong. Very hot-headed, which is a good personality trait to carry over from the OVAs. Adamai is different. He's not the protagonist's friendly little sidekick brother anymore. Adamai is his own person. He is grown and changed, and you can tell from even his design that something went wrong. And I think it's reflected in his mental state and his actions too. From what I can see, Adamai seems to have PTSD and severe depression, as well as borderline personality disorder, which I've been discussing throughout this entire time. I would like to say that this is the part of the section where it gets a little personal, so if you would like to skip ahead, I completely understand. Come back when you're ready. But as a person with a provisional diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and someone who is already seeing the symptoms start to form, I relate to Adamai. I understand him. I mean, all his life he's been abandoned, be it by Yugo, Kilby, Grugalorgran, Ferris, or his friends. In the end, he feels like he's expendable to them. But Adamai is very, very, resilient. He has endured so much abandonment, so much mistreatment, and it's not really talked about because Yugo is the fandom's main focus, which makes sense. He is the protagonist after all, but I think a large portion of why Adamai's pain has been so ignored or just outright misstated is because he has a lot of nuance, and he's a very realistic depiction of mental illness. I mean, honestly, the fact that he's a dragon probably doesn't help either because he's non-human and not visually appealing like Yugo is, but that's another story. Going back on topic to season 3, Adamai is definitely an untreated, mentally ill person who is in the severe range of mental illnesses. He's clearly struggling, as we can see him actually talk about it a little bit with Oropo. Adamai still holds empathy for his old friends and his brother, even wanting to see them win, even if that's just a small part of him. Oropo assures him that that's normal and that it's okay to feel like that, because in the end, they are fundamentally good. They are good people. They just... Obviously, this doesn't really comfort Adamai, because why would he still be attached to people who hurt him so bad? Which, it's actually a phenomenon that does happen with people with BPD, which I will go into detail about in the way I know how. Adamai, from what I can see, has favorite people. Favorite people are a person with BPD's support pillar. They are their anchor to the world, in a sense. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. Please bear with me. I am not a trained professional in psychology. I'm just reporting things that were listed in my diagnosis. Favorite people can be very helpful or detrimental to our health. Usually they're detrimental because they are unhealthy attachments. People with BPD also tend to have delusions, which can lead to them making stupid decisions or hurting themselves or hurting someone else. These delusions often tie in with the fear of abandonment, which can lead them to do stupid things, like cutting off a relationship. They can be accompanied by hallucinations sometimes, paranoia. Does this sound familiar? Because this is what I think Adamai experiences. In my view, this goes back to the OVAs. Adamai had deluded himself into concluding that, yes, they do hate you, because he's already struggled with this so many times that it's better to cut off a relationship before they can cut you off, so that you don't get hurt. Now, going back to favorite people, I think that Adamai's favorite people range very, very wildly. For starters, I think that one of Adamai's many favorite people was Kilby. Kilby was this all-knowing mentor, this safe place he could rely on. Kilby knew everything. Kilby knew how to help him with Google, how to help with Chibi. Kilby was wise, he was strong. Kilby understood Adamai. Kilby didn't make Adamai feel betrayed or abandoned. And that's why I think the possession also had such a big toll on Adamai, because this is one of the main people he ever trusted. This is somebody who he hinged his mental state on, who was constantly there to support him even when he was alone, when his brother was all the way on the other side of the world. And yet, Kilby just trod on him when he decided that Adamai would not be essential to the plan. So honestly, you could tell how that could screw him up a little bit and give him, just a tad bit of abandonment issues, just a little bit. But I think these favorite people ultimately rule how he sees relationships. I think they affect him as a person and oftentimes cause Adamai to change himself for that other person. And this actually leads into his season 3 design, which I think that design is really good at accomplishing what it set out to do. That design is very uncanny. It doesn't look right. You can tell that something isn't adding up. And in season 4, we learn that there's a reason for it. Adamai's form in season 3 is a blend of human and dragon. Apparently, it's different to the other forms that he used to take. I'm assuming that Adamai felt this need to be more draconic for the Brotherhood of the Forgotten and for Oropo, who I believe is another one of his favorite people. But he feels like he needs to be more draconic. He needs to live up to the fact that Oropo is his heliotrope twin, taking the place of Yugo. He needs to be the perfect dragon. He needs to be understood. But at the same time, He wants to be recognized that he is sentient. He knows what he's doing. The Dofus accelerate his growth and merge him into this half body, half thing. He doesn't know what he is, and he doesn't fight it anymore because it's natural. It gives him more flexibility, but it takes away what really matters: his stability. In the end, in season 3, Adamai is not at his mental best by any stretch of imagination. I mean, he got triggered just when looking at the Persidal family because he needed to retrieve their children, and he ended up killing Dali. I think actually that this was a manic breakdown, as manic episodes are typically characterized by a higher emotional response. I'm so sorry, I am trying to explain this as best as I can. Manic episodes are characterized by increased impulsivity, increased emotions, and oftentimes lack of sleep. I think that when Adamai was having a manic episode, it was triggered by the Persidal family, which is understandable because Adamai blames Persidal for Yugo abandoning him, because Persidal was the one that Yugo used the Dofus for, even though Adamai had made Yugo promise to never use the Dofus, which not only is it breaking a promise, it's leaving him behind. And it's stupid to blame Dali for Yugo's actions. They are different people. They can't control each other. But it aligns with the mentally ill, thoughts going through his head. This is his twin brother. I need to reiterate that as much as possible. This is his twin brother who just decided, yeah, I'm going to save my friend and worry about the world later, because I can do both. And Adamai warns him, you might not be able to, and then Adamai's the villain. So it would be understandable if Dali was the trigger for his manic episode, which probably is the reason why Adamai was so impulsive and called Yugo up to show him, I have your best friend. You've been looking for me for years now, and I'm the one who reached out, and I'm the one who is righting your wrong, killing the person who should have died then, had you not abandoned me. Which, yeah, that is really sick and twisted, but sometimes that's just how intrusive thoughts are. Sometimes you are so bad that those intrusive thoughts win. And that was what makes mental illness so dangerous. There is thoughts in your head that are not supposed to be there if you're healthy. Mental illness is still illness, and Adamai suffers from a lot of them. That isn't an excuse for his actions, just an explanation. So he does kill Dali, and I think it wasn't actually a full manic episode. I believe it was more of a hypomania, which means it is shorter, but it's still the same mania. But you can see him calm down when he talks to Pooh at the end. So, yeah. And then I want to skip ahead a lot to the finale of season 3. Adamai is betrayed by Oripo. And going back to my thing where I thought Oripo was one of his favorite people, that means he's been betrayed by another favorite person. And yet, Adamai doesn't demonstrate any hurt from it. He's upset, yes, he's shocked that Oripo is going to bomb everything. He's going to start anew with these new gods, but he doesn't really show anything else, which I think is very in character for him, because Adamai tends to suppress all of his thoughts and feelings And we have seen it being done before in previous seasons, like season 1, where Grigolorgran died. He only expressed it to Yugo and to himself, really. So I think season 3 Adamai is in character. Just his trauma seems to take effect on him off screen. Which, another thing is, Adamai's personality in Wakfu season 3 does a complete 180. But if you look closer, the signs are there. He is an incredibly well-written character in my eyes. I think his trauma was written extremely well and handled even better. Of course, there are things I would change, but all in all, Adamai is very fleshed out. He is a very nuanced character, and I love him for it. I think he is very well done. But going back to the finale, Adamai's reactions there are pretty standard for people with BPD. I mean, he's just found out that he's been lied to again. And honestly, this is where I think his PTSD ties in as well, because he is in another similar traumatic situation that he has been in before, and he's out of control. There's nothing he can do anymore. He sat there and helped. He helped this plan come to fruition because Orobo didn't inform him fully. But he reconciles with Yugo and has to stop Orobo, and then Echo sends him to Inglorium. Imagine how hard that must be, all of that happening, and you just found out that your favorite person wasn't telling you everything. Your favorite person used you in a sense. That he's just like your old brother who made you get possessed. And now you're stuck in this form, this half-dragon, half-human thing that'll cause heads to turn at you for life. There's not really anything you can do because you did it for him and he just used you. But Adamai gets through it, and he's in Inglorium, and he has no time to worry about whatever Orobo did to him. And now we get to season 4. In season 4, I will say there's not really that much Adamai content happening because it's mainly focused on the Elia tropes and, the Necromes. But in the moments we do get of him, Adamai's pretty well written too. I think what he suffers from in season 4 is not bad writing, it's just an absence of writing. In the first few episodes, we get light shed on why Adamai looks the way he does. But we also get him interacting with a sibling that isn't Yugo, or a form of him. We get a return of Kilby, and I think the way Adamai handles it is pretty accurate to how I would handle an old favorite person who has wronged me and come back scot-free. Of course, Adamai is upset with Kilby for what he's done. Kilby committed genocide already. He tried to do it again with an entire world. Every single thing on the world of 12 would have been eradicated if not for Yugo. And yet, Kilby doesn't seem to understand yet that the world isn't his playground and it's not for him to use and dispose of when he's bored. But we also get him interacting with Nora, which their relationship is a little bit more healthy. We can see Adamai is a little uncomfortable with her, but he knows her, or at least he feels he does. I'm pretty sure he's scared to think that this is another sibling, because this means that if the trend continues, this is another sibling he can lose. this is another person who could just die. Leave him alone. But that leads him to act first, which this may sound familiar, but yeah, sometimes people with BPD act impulsively, which is sometimes fueled by fear of abandonment and fear of loss. And I want to clarify that abandonment and loss for a person with BPD can literally be anything. It can really range from anything to a friendship ending, to a relationship ending, to somebody just walking out the door to go to work and not texting back. Honestly, BPD has to be treated like a mental illness because, yeah, that's what it is. But people sometimes treat it as an excuse to harm people who are suffering from this, which isn't making it better, it's just making it worse. People with BPD struggle with these things, and if they let you know, then they seem to trust you, probably. But going back to Adamaï, he leaves first. He tells Yugo outright, "I'm sorry, I'm leaving again, I can't do this." His exact words are hard to pinpoint for me. I am not very good at the memory stuff, but it's along the lines of, "I'd rather stay away because I'm just going to get hurt again," which I interpret as him being scared of the same thing with Oripo happening with Heliotrope, since he's starting to see similarities. This is how he protects himself from being abandoned or losing anyone. Adamaï does come back when they need him, which does show that he does care for his family. Adamaï willingly takes the Dofus on again, even after what they did last time, even after the memories he holds with them, which are not pleasant memories. But he takes them on again, and him and the others go into the Necro world, where they encounter Tauros Mortal. And they can't leave. They're stranded, and then Tauros reveals himself, and Adamaï is the one to fight him. And through this fight, Kilby decides that he should take charge of those Dofus again, because he does know how to use them. He's centuries older, millennia older, and there's nothing Adamaï can do but give them to him. He's injured. Tauros got to him really well. And Kilby does get them out of there. Most of them. Yugo is left behind this time. And Adamaï's left alone with these people and this mother he'd only met recently. So Yugo is left in the Necro world, and unfortunately we don't really get any perspective on Adamaï's struggles because we're too focused on Yugo's struggles, which is, again, that makes sense. This is his show after all. But I digress. And then, skipping ahead a little bit, because honestly, half of season 4 was kind of a blur to me, but we move on to where Yugo comes back. Kilby is dead, but Adamaï has his twin brother back. And then they brofist. I'm so sorry, Ankama, what were you thinking with that? But Adamaï has his twin back, and his twin is changed. He's grown up. Adamaï's no longer the towering one. But they use the Eliosphere, which Kilby had died getting, as well as died getting Yugo, but they use the Eliosphere, and Adamaï is powered up. He is consistently seen using more Wakfu and physical attacks than Stasis, but he did use Stasis in Season 1. And then in Season 4, it's a nice conclusion, because he uses it again with Ephraim. But I'm pretty sure with, his new transformation, the stasis in his eyes is harmful because his new body is so filled up with Wakfu that the amount of stasis that he is channeling can be harmful. So naturally, Ephraim gets the grapple on him, and I can only imagine how terrifying that is. Your eyes are in pain, and you still have to fight. And this is your brother. This is someone who in another life you would have known, you would have grown up with. But they win the fight, and it's never really addressed how Adamai heals. Adamai has so much trauma. He has so many things going on with him that just go unaddressed. Adamai has so many loose ends, but that's the end. But we do get to see him a little bit more in the Great Wave webtoon or manga. We see how he has adapted a bit. He still seems a little bit screwed up. He's still healing, obviously. But him and Yugo at least have a relationship again. They're still talking to each other now. And Adamai takes on half of the poisoning that was, meant for Yugo. And then they're captured by Grugolorosaur, so we don't really see anymore. But, all in all, Adamai's portrayal in Wakfu seems like a very realistic character arc that deals with very realistic depictions of trauma and its effects. So we come to my final word and my commentary on the Wakfu fandom and how it treats Adamai. In all honesty, I've only seen a few people who completely understand the complexity of Adamai's character and the traumas he's gone through. Unfortunately, there is a lot of flanderization of him as he is a very nuanced character, and a lot of people just stop at finding him attractive. And I mean, I get it. Everyone has their tastes, and at the end of the day, sure, he might not be conventionally attractive, but you can do you. I just think that this attraction sometimes, dampens the actual character that is so magnificently written that it just turns him into a different character altogether. Adamai is a very flawed character. He is the protagonist's realistic brother. He's not the dreamer. And there are so much nuanced parts of him that just go ignored because people boil him down to his attractiveness or his overall tragic events, which, again, that just takes away from his character as a whole. I personally think that Adamai is a very troubled and very traumatized individual who puts up a facade of coolness and aloofness to hide the fact that in reality, he's a scared child who has been left behind and abandoned and trod all over way too many times. I honestly believe that Adamai deserves a happy ending. I think what has happened to him is horrible, and no one should ever live through that, even if he's a fictional character. I think he is a very well-written, very realistic depiction of mental illness and its effects on a person. And I think the fandom would do better to realize that and understand that even though he may be attractive or an angst machine or whatever you think he is still a person, and he was hurt very badly. Thank you for listening to this video essay. It is one of my firsts ever. Feel free to bring up anything else you think would fit in this essay, and feel free to talk in the comments about what you agree or disagree with. I'd love to hear it. But thank you for watching and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video.